here is my pixel art journey. So far. Hello, my name is Jade and I like to paint pixels. So, I didn't start my pixel art journey until my first year of university in 2017. Oh, that is a long time ago. But this is when I made my first prototype for a game called What Goes Around. This was a game where you played as a little robot trying to get back to their best friend, and they find an antenna in a scrapyard that allows them to rotate the world around them. This was the title screen for it, which honestly, I still really like to this day. I like that I was going for like a limbo-esque approach by having the foreground elements and the character as a dark silhouette, and that contrasted well against the brighter colors of the background elements. I think this worked quite well for my first go at pixel art because it meant that I didn't have to worry about using the right colors or how to simplify the details of a character at such a small scale. I just had to focus on making an interesting silhouette and make sure that the shape of that was clear. It also made it easier for when I started animating the character because it helped me focus on making sure that the actions were clear too, since I was only using one color. Obviously, it was a very simple animation for pretty much just the run cycle, but hey, it was okay for a first attempt. It's nice looking back at this because this little character has actually become a little avatar that I use now for my pixel art streams, as a PNG tuber, and also for my emotes and my badges as well. I don't know if I'll keep it the same forever, but it's nice to have this little guy go with me through both my journey into game dev and pixel art as well. Look at them, they're just a little guy. Just a little fella. After this project, I really enjoyed making pixel art and I wanted to get into it more. I started watching some pixel art streamers and one of those was Lumpy Touch, a very skilled artist who used to run these Bob Ross paint-alongs, which were a ton of fun to do, and these were a few of the final pieces that I did from some of those streams. This was my first proper introduction into using a given palette and learning how you can utilize some of those colors in multiple combinations, like using the darkest color for the background, but also the darkest part of the shadows on an object, like the meteors, and using a different color so that it doesn't blend in with the background, but still stands out as a deep shadow. After that, I was still struggling to know what to draw just from my own imagination, but I discovered Pixel Dailies, and this was a daily drawing challenge where everyone was given a prompt each day and they would come up with their own interpretation of it. This really helped me just sort of let go of that perfectionism since it was a daily practice and I couldn't spend too long on them, and it sometimes encouraged me to combine some of the prompts into a singular drawing if I missed a day. Like this one, for example. If anyone can recognize where this little guy is from, it's one of my favorite cartoons growing up. Bonus points for you. But I even found my first portrait that I did as part of a yearbook prompt, and wow, it is wild to see how much I've improved comparing it to some of the drawings that I've done now. Around this time, I also did my first game jam, where I covered the art for the project, and it was called Time Squad. In this game, you had to retrieve a precious crystal to repair your ship, but when you pick it up, a duplicate of your character would appear, and they would repeat all of the steps that you took in the level, but in reverse, and you had to sort of follow them back to your ship before the time ran out. This was my first go at designing my own character from scratch, and we named her Ava. I really like her design, and I think the atoms I did for her were okay, but it's definitely not something that I'm well versed in, even to this day, and I'd like to try more projects to improve on animating and just adding a bit of movement, because even the smallest bit of movement can bring so much life to a piece, and I'd like to incorporate that more into what I do now. I also used a lot of pixel art for my university projects that year. I made a study buddy app, and all the art for that was done by me. I quite like the cozy vibes and the backgrounds in this. I heavily leaned into a cartoon style for the two avatars that you could pick between, because I was still not very confident at drawing people at this point. Ultimate Tic-Tac-Toe was my big group project for the year, and I did all of the art assets except for the characters in this, which I didn't mind because I had plenty to cover with all the other game assets. In this game, you had to go through multiple rounds of tic-tac-toe, where you would verse an AI in a series of like WarioWare micro games to win a chance at placing your counter down first. And then you went through a series of these settings in sort of a tournament arc until you reached the finish. This project helped me learn how to make game assets in sort of a bigger project and make sure that they were formatted correctly so that they would be the correct scale for specific things like the background and the different player pieces. I enjoyed trying to make the same assets but with a different theme, like the science lab. I think that one's my favorite out of the 3 that I did. I also learned about how to make looping animations for things like the Bunsen burner and the flask above it. Trying to make that a smooth loop was an interesting challenge, but I think it worked pretty well in the end. Also, shout out to the hands in this one. I remember these took ages to do. But these are the best hands I've ever drawn, and I do not think I will be able to top them. I went out for a placement year and didn't really have a lot of work to show over 2019. I just didn't really have the time to do much pixel art at that point. But in October of 2020 is when I started streaming at Twitch. And at that time, I did a mix of gaming streams, but then also a weekly art stream, which is what I still do to this day. There's a link in bio if you ever want to stop by. I remember being really nervous at first drawing on stream. I feel like there's something quite vulnerable about showing your entire process and making mistakes and redoing work all live while it's happening in real time. I remember I wanted to make them as interactive as possible though, so I tried to take chat suggestions and sort of play around with my art more as illustrations rather than functional assets for something like a game or a bigger project. This one in particular was from asking chat what their favorite sweets were, and then we did a whole tier list of what the superior sweet was. I think it was more around chocolate, but Kit Kat and Galaxy won, obviously. Fight me in the comments. This other one was from when I asked chat what their dream road trip would be. And this final one is one of my favorites, but it is so niche when I look back at it. I wanted to make an Animal Crossing character together. Someone that would stop by and ask you for an item to trade you for some furniture in return. Sort of like the otter. I can't remember the name of him while recording this. But the little otter guy. Sort of like that. And we eventually came up with Rolf, who was this dolphin. And they would ask you for starfishes, and in return they would give you some sort of hiking gear, like tents, campfires, that sort of thing. And Rolf was an avid hiker, even though, you know, he was a dolphin. But it was so fun to make together because he had all these little bits of lore from chat, and for future drawings we'd joke around and we'd try to put him in different drawings in some way, shape, or form. Like these topiary bushes, when I was trying to practice leaf textures, and a little snow dolphin when I was trying to figure out how to draw snow, and even in the stained glass window when we were doing a fan art of Peach's castle in like a different style. I think it was just nice to have something to sort of fall back on when I wasn't sure what to draw, and it was a nice little inside joke between me and chat that we could hide in other drawings, and I don't know, I really like that aspect of it. I think after a while, I did get a little bit overwhelmed, and as time went on, for a mixture of things, I think life just did its thing, and the amount of streams that I did got less and less, and because that was my only time that I was drawing, I ended up not drawing as well. In around mid-2022, I started to post to Instagram. I knew I wanted to explore mixing scrapbooking and stationery like markers and highlighters into my sort of style, and I started with an emote challenge to try and build up some consistency. So every day for a month I would draw one emoji, and it was a fixed size, I think 36 by 36. I honestly am not entirely sure, but it really did help me build up some consistency. And it was a fun exercise to try and start out with. I even tried to do a couple that were suggested by people in the comments, and so it kept a bit of that interactivity that I enjoyed going. This worked for a while, but eventually I think I set too high of an expectation with the work that I wanted to do on myself. And I had all these big plans of doing like multiple illustrations that sort of tied together into a mini comic or a story. And so eventually I got burnt out and sort of got stuck in a cycle of wanting to post, but still getting worried that if I started posting, I wouldn't be able to keep it up. And then for a while, I just didn't really draw anything at all. This went on for about half a year, maybe longer. And from there until the present day, you've kind of seen quite a bit of the work that I've been doing since I've tried to take pixel art and my learning a bit more seriously, and at least trying to draw a bit more consistently and giving that a proper go, but in a more sort of sustainable way that works for me. It's interesting looking back because in the first couple of years, I made a lot of pixel art as part of game assets for a project, whereas now I do a lot more for just the illustration aspect and storytelling. But I think it was good for me to have a particular topic to focus my efforts on at the start. I think I was in sort of an exploratory phase learning pixel art. I wanted to know what sort of things I enjoyed drawing, what didn't I enjoy. Whereas now, I feel like I know what I want to improve on a bit more, and I can sort of make my own projects to help guide that. So like the little 100-day challenges that I've been doing, Peachtober, creating my own little characters and like the world that Fern and the gang are in. My big flower project that's been going on for months now, which is crazy. And now learning to draw portraits. It's nice to see the progression and sort of where all of that originated from. And honestly, I do miss making assets for game projects. I'll have to try and join another game jam sometime soon. I have a long way to go, but with that, that is a whistle-stop tour of my pixel art journey so far, and it's really nice to look at the progress that I've made and sort of take a little trip down memory lane, and I hope you enjoyed this little trip too. I'll see you in the next one. Take care out there. Bye-bye!